We are recording.
Okay.
We're on. We're live. Hello, all. Hello.
Mm.
Great to see you, Michelle.
Hey.
Thanks for joining our little video today as we explore the challenges, the opportunities, and all those things volunteering and club and charity land under the Firefly Initiative banner. Daryl, quick intro.
Yeah.
What's happened in the week? What's going on? Good to see you again.
Lots of things that have gone on. Got some exciting stuff again. We're really close to the launch of our ECT model, as we've offered that carrot out there in relation to the passive fundraising model that we're going to deliver, and we're about to do that. So that's pretty exciting. So make sure that you keep checking the newsletter,
Beautiful.
and obviously you'll be seeing this video on the current newsletter.
You will.
And hopefully we'll get some really good insights about how we can leverage that up even more with our
Special
esteemed
guest, our
and
super
awesome,
special guest.
our awesome guest today, Michelle. Thanks for being with us, Michelle.
No, no
As
problem.
I said,
Thank you for having me.
I've heard lots of good things about you from Courtney. But anyway, without me going into that, I won't steal your thunder. How about you let our audience know, Michelle, how you fit into this picture, what you do, and how you contribute your volunteering time to the community.
Yeah, okay. So, look, I'm based down on the Mornington Peninsula, down in a tiny little suburb called Bonio, which is sort of surrounded by farmland. We've got a tennis club here that I'm a part of. I'm the president of the tennis club. I sold my business in 2020, going through COVID, and needed something to do. Went looking and found that the Peninsula Tennis Association needed some assistance. So I took on a small role, which got a bit bigger and a bit bigger.
There's a meme right there, isn't there? Hey, I took on a small role. Yeah,
that's
nice.
it. So, but having said that, I did that willingly.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed the challenges of learning a lot of new stuff. So I previously had a holiday accommodation business, ran my own company or business. Previous to that, my husband is a farmer. We ran a big farm in the UK. So I'd always worked for myself. So I think coming on board with a committee, there was lots of things to learn. There was lots of tech stuff to learn, things that I had never done before. So that was a really interesting challenge for me. I liked having the opportunity to explore some of these things without the pressure of it being a total work environment, I guess. So
lots of personalities to manage as well versus
what
sort of part where you livestock farm or crops?
We were a mixed farm, so we had cattle, sheep, and crops. We had fingers and lots of pies. So that, but again, that sort of farming element doesn't involve people at all. Our holiday accommodation business was almost the flip of that, which was having to be nice to people all the time. And after 20 years, that became a bit of a challenge. So it was good to sort of step away from that. And then I guess, I'd got into playing tennis, and my tennis club needed some people there to help out. So I sort of started small there, re-established myself in the tennis landscape because I hadn't played tennis all my life. I'd played a bit as a junior up till I was about 12, and then had a massive break until my kids started playing tennis. And got asked one night, could I fill in because one of the ladies was sick, and if I didn't play, then 7 other people were going to miss out. So I ended
up bribery and corruption.
That's it. Jumping on court and playing, and loved it. Fell back in love with tennis, and so look, I'm not a good player by any stretch of the imagination, but I enjoy the social connection and the people that I meet, and So sort of going back around, I guess, I'm president now at my own tennis club. I'm the secretary of the Peninsula Tennis Association, and just because I don't wear enough hats, I also, with our tennis club, we have a partnership with our local market, which runs once on the third Saturday of the month, once a month. And I am the president there and volunteer my time once a month to make sure that market runs. and all the logistics behind running a market. So, but essentially, it's very much the same community, and it's all very close to my home. So I can see the benefits in lots of different ways to my own community, people close to me.
Yeah. So
I
think
sorry for that, Darryl, but the intersection is that Michelle and I know each other through the tennis world, and I work closely with Michelle on the PTA, which is a wonderful opportunity for me, because Michelle is one of those people that talks about this little role, and then because of her excellence or desire to be excellent, creates a little role into a big role. And so now we're working out how we keep the big role going without all of the extra human effort that would need to come with that role. And so there's lots of challenges that I think volunteers can create for themselves by just being too good in terms of the legacy that comes behind that, right? And that's not an intentional problem that you're trying to create. You're trying to do good, but you create this vacuum behind you that's really, really challenging to fulfill in the next generation or the next round. So these are all the day-to-day challenges. The bit that I'm super intrigued by, and have been in our conversations, Michelle, is around this continuity piece, how you're linking these different community sectors together, PTA being that sort of the overarching component of tennis on the peninsula, to your own club and the issues you've got to face there. And we're only talking offline about the council issues we're facing at the moment, about this, singularization towards clubs, when really we should be doing that across the community. And then, of course, how you fundraise. And those really smart ways you've done that. And so I'd like to lean into those. But Darryl, before I do that, maybe perhaps you had a question that was pertinent as well.
Oh, no, I was just going to pass a idle comment that I'd heard on numerous occasions. I think Michelle uttered those famous last words of, so I stepped into this little role, which is the famous last words of every president, I believe. They've stepped into this little role. And the other thing too, because Michelle, we have a viewing audience of our volunteer members. If anyone is down on the Frankston and Mornington Peninsula area that needs a good volunteer, I'm sure Michelle's got plenty of spare time.
Well,
to jump into a new
Michelle
opportunity.
Is doing a PR stint with the local news agencies in respect to tennis on the peninsula, so about to become famous for all sorts of reasons.
There
you go. So there's a call out to all our volunteers down there if you need someone to give you a bit of guidance. And Michelle
and look,
will happily step into a small role.
This is clearly a lever, Darryl, for us to say this is the first step into the Peninsula Fraternity of Tennis for Firefly as well, which I've kept very quiet and under the radar until we had something of value. And now we're bringing one of the best that I know on the peninsula to a conversation. So let's talk about volunteer world. We've got a really good background across three different roles, quite different in what they need to do. Where are the bits where you're finding, if we break it up into the conversations we've had strategically about volunteering, the digital bit? I'd be curious on what you're seeing the digital bit and what that's looking like, and the gaps I know are there in the traditional communities around the digital bit, the bit around the local human touch, and then how do you run an administration program if you want to run it efficiently and effectively moving forward if you can't find volunteers, which you might not say that's a major a concern for the communities you serve, but we know it is on the PTA, one of the issues, but widely thinking and the conversations we're having, that's one of the big concerns coming forward. Could you just talk to those topics a little bit, please, in your world?
Well, yeah, look, I think just starting at a club level, then something sort of because the environment has changed a little bit, like people expecting things on social media, and people are expecting to get emails, and they're not so reliant on that old-fashioned conversation. Everything, they want everything in a WhatsApp chat. These are all great tools, but they need somebody to manage them, and so and somebody to have the time just to do, make sure that that picture looks great and the formatting looks good, and that the message, it's not just about the message that they're sending out. So sometimes something that seems very innocuous, like just put a post up on Facebook, it involves a bit of time. And so there's a lot of it is that you yourself as a committee member may not have the skill set to do those things. And so you've either got to work out a way of finding somebody and tapping them on the shoulder and say, hey, look, I see you're on social media all the time. Perhaps you could give us a hand. Or it is, you employ somebody, or you reach out to a consultant, somebody else to take care of those elements for you. So that's sort of and that sort of touches across all different elements of whatever volunteering you've done, because you want people to know about whatever it is that you're doing. So you want more people coming to your tennis club, or you want more people participating in your, tennis leagues, or you want people to come to the market and buy those products and pay their couple of dollars at the sausage sizzle that goes into your fundraising budget. So there's lots of sort of elements to get those things in place.
The digital bit, the digital bit is tricky. It can add huge value if you get it right, but it can also cause pain and anguish for people that are uncomfortable, shy, or not feeling that they've got the skill sets to adapt. On the fundraising topic, you mentioned that you are involved in there we go, involved in the
that little word,
the local what's it called, the community.
So, the Borneo Community Market.
Borneo Community Market. So for those out there, please, if you're ever down on the Morning Peninsula, make sure you come along. I went along in summer and it was amazing. But what's the setup there? I mean, that's, you're looking at a fundraising piece, but you've created this, I'd say, quite a decent piece of work for yourself to fundraise. So what's the net return that you're looking for out of that? And have you looked at other ways that were less cumbersome or I'm really curious.
Well, so the market's been running since 1977. So, and it wasn't necessarily, there's three sort of stakeholders, I guess. So the local primary school, the local cricket club, and the tennis club. And each organisation has to put forward a certain amount of volunteers and volunteer hours to make sure that the market runs successfully. So each, in return for those volunteer jobs that need completing, each stakeholder group gets between sort of $15,000 and $18,000 a year.
Wow.
To a small tennis club with only 4 courts and 120 members, that's a huge amount of money that goes toward maintaining our facility. So we've just spent, I hate to say it out loud, close to $60,000 on new fencing and new wiring to our lights, which all came out of the pocket of the tennis club.
But all by the club, right? So that's the amazing thing from your own contribution. Yeah.
So it's without the market, we certainly couldn't have done that. So the market itself, there's about 150 stalls each market, and they pay a small stallholder fee to attend the market and be sort of set up on the oval. We charge a gold coin donation to people to park their cars. But we want to make it a place of community. So we want people to come regularly. We want people to come and have a coffee and catch up with their friends. So we don't want to be prohibitive with regard to costing. We want small people who, knit baby blankets or beanies, or do small artisan cheese, like just people, a creative space for people to come and show their goods and sell their things. And it's not, it's community. And I think that's the big part of that. But it certainly makes all the community groups connected, which I think is really important.
Can you have a crack at an estimate? You said that the 3 entities involved are responsible for providing volunteers for the day to help that function. Outside that, what would be the participation rate of attendance from the collective members and volunteers that aren't actually working? Do you know, like how many of the members of the tennis club would rock on down on a Saturday to have a look? And
look, across the year, I would expect all of them would have come down. Maybe they don't come down every month, but they certainly, they all come down for their little mini pancakes, or they've all got their special sweet treats that they've got to come down for. And I mean, the same with the cricket club. They've got, a big group playing groups. So yeah, there's a lot of they come down pretty regularly, and the primary school, there's I think about 360 kids at the school, and you always see kids going around the market and chatting to the volunteers. There's a couple of the principal, she's always at the market, and she's always being all the kids are running up to her and saying hello. And so yeah, I think there's, because our community is slightly rural, I guess it is a meeting spot. So there's, it's a great spot for all the different groups to come together.
Yeah. And what would you say from the feedback from the vendors' perspective? Like, how important is the market to them?
They love it. That, and they're one of their biggest comments is it's such a friendly market. Like, we love coming here. It's got a great vibe. There's I think, and they know that it's run by volunteers. So, I mean, some of them are just super generous. When you're on volunteer duty, you have to wear your volunteer high vis vest, and so you do stand out. But they, you go up for a cup of coffee, and it's no, that's fine, no charge today. You're volunteering your time, or you go up to get a bag of apples or something from one of the growers, and they're more than happy to pass it over, or say half price or whatever. So they're very appreciative of the people that are volunteering and that are giving up their time so that they can sell all their products and make a bit of money. So
yeah, it's fantastic. I'm going to lead you back into tech land here for a minute, speaking on that, and we talked about some of the things, and certainly I know the conversation's been had relative to how do we use new tools now to simplify the processes and management and reporting of committee meetings and all that sorts of things. But what tech do you use in relation to the management of the market?
The market's still fairly low tech. So we run when I stepped into the role about 5 years ago, we didn't have a website. We had a very basic social media presence. We did a lot of store bookings and everything via a telephone, phone calls and text messages. So we set up an email, we set up a website. They did run everything on a very basic spreadsheet, but we've sort of added a little bit of extra enhancement to that. But there are still things that we're not getting right that could be done better, but sometimes you just don't have the time or the skills to know how to fix that. So our particular market is a sort of a maker's market, so you have to make it, bake it, grow it yourself. And so there is a little bit of I guess what's the right word, curation maybe, I don't know, that's not the right word, but you've just got to check on the people that are wanting to come to make sure that they fit within our fairly strict criteria. So somebody who wants to sell toys that they've imported from China, unfortunately they don't fit. Whether the product is great or not, they still don't fit within our category. So we just need to monitor that sort of thing, and that needs to be done as an in-person sort of setup. But yeah, I think the market, whilst we're moving forward technologically, we're still a lot of pen and paper and the old Excel spreadsheet.
Change takes time, though. We know this. Change takes time. The bit I'm curious about is this concept of micro communities, and you've clearly got there's three micro communities involved in the market itself, and then each of those has to run their own thing and do their own thing. Where do you go for your knowledge about how to improve? Where do people go for their knowledge in those micro communities to actually go better? Because I think that's the really interesting bit that I'm finding is the gap, is that there's no easy place to find information or to find tools that work for a particular industry type or things like that. It's quite an extensive search and often not local to your micro community. So it feels foreign and it feels outside. So where do you go? Like, what do you do to look for improvement?
I guess, to date, we've really only relied on the volunteers that have come forward. So we were super lucky that one of the school parents, she has a very small niche sort of, I guess, social media business that she works for somebody else. And she said, look, I have a skill set in this. I can't give you a massive amount of time, but I can give you some direction, and we can set up, a brand and things like that we hadn't really, everything had been very ad hoc. So she's come on board to help with that. But it is a bit of a minefield to go out there looking for how things might help. And so you really are just relying on the volunteers and them putting their hand up and saying, hey, I know a bit about this. Can I give you a hand?
Yeah, it's an amazing paradigm. I think about the activities we've undertaken and some of those things like just a GPT, how efficiently you use that now. Do you know what I mean, as a tool? Like it's an incredibly efficient piece of kit that can really add value to your day to day. Yet there's so many people that I still know that don't use it on a regular basis or haven't lent in. And so I think is it fair to say that, or have we got a strong correlation between volunteers who think like in that old school community way? Is there a risk that we've got a very low saturation of technologists in that group because they're just people to people, maybe a bit older? Is that a sense you feel? Because it's a sense I'm feeling as well.
Yeah, look, I know, that quite often that the people who have really strong tech skills, and I speak within my own family, that they're not necessarily the most social people, and yet if you ask them the right questions, you'll get the right answers. But you need to know what those questions are in the first place to ask. So sometimes it's hard to identify how you might make something better because you're just in it. You're in it, and so you don't have the opportunity to, look outside. And see how other people do it. So I think,
that's one of the best statements I've heard for a long time, because it resonates in business as well, which is it's not the best answer, it's the best question.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
The best question. And if you don't know the question, that you're already behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So that's a super example of where do you go, how do you get it, and how do you learn more.
I think the other part to that is, and this is probably more on my tennis club volunteering, is that a lot of people who, and this is more a business thing too, I suppose, but a lot of people who have a knowledge base or they know how to do something are not always willing to share it with other people. So it's that's something that was one of the biggest things I wanted to take away or to share, I guess, with from my club then within the PTA, is that, like, we went through a process of looking for a new coach. But again, it was like a massive learning curve. Where do I start with this? What are the questions I need to ask? Who are the people that are going to give me some help? And we had to write a contract. We had to do all these things. And so now I know when there are other clubs needing that expertise, I say to them, okay, this is the process that we followed. This is the questions that we asked. These are the people, the parameters that we identified. So, we've got a lot of children, or we've got a lot of older people, or we had to go through and ask the right questions to get to the point where we could make the right answer. Or make the right choice of a coach. Even things like a business plan, we did that at our tennis club, and that was a really hard process because a lot of people at the club hadn't done anything like that before. And it's easy to identify something that is for your own business that's quite, you're the one who's making the decisions. When you're making the decisions for a collective, like a club or a community group or an association, you've got to wear a different hat, and you've got to use a different decision-making process. And so I think it's really important to share what you know with other people who are going through those things, and not just not just keep it to yourself. It's like, oh, we've got a really great business plan, and look at them, they're suffering. Well, nobody wins in that. Nobody wins.
It comes back to the question again. We don't interconnect outside of our islands well either. Like we sit in our little isolated space, in our little isolated domain. Like I look at that problem now, and I saw a really, really interesting technology presentation around the future of abundance, and it was about abundance, and I was really intrigued by it. And I was saying that the net cost of energy is going to go to zero with the way in which solar is going and battery storage. So governments will be able to deliver that at a near zero cost in terms of delivery. But the other big one was the net opportunity for intelligence is going to zero cost as well, which means that anyone can be on a level playing field in knowledge if you use the right tools and information. Yeah. So business plans, all of those things that were traditionally really, really complex pieces, even the questions I need to ask a coach, what would be the 10 best questions to identify to get the best coach? That is all available at our fingertips now. Yeah. The issue is that I would say 80% of this audience, our audience, doesn't know what it is or how to use it. So I don't think it's the only solve. I think it's a big solve moving forward in the gap between skills that are coming through. Before Daryl asks his question, talk a little bit about volunteers and where the state of play is with volunteering in your mind.
Everyone has time pressures, and everybody, unfortunately, I think on the back of COVID has become a little selfish, or and maybe that's selfish is the wrong word, because they've just appreciated, what it is to make those connections and do things for themselves. And so that sometimes changes their priorities about the time they're going to give to their community. So it is increasingly difficult. And the other thing I'm finding is that everybody wants to have a go at everything. So they want to, they want to be in lots of doing lots of different things. And I'm a victim of that too. But that just changes their priorities. They don't have necessarily the time that they might have had, before, because they're trying to get to tennis, and then they're going to follow that up with a game of golf, or then they're probably going to catch up with their mates for a beer after that. And, so when you sort of tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, look, could you just run the sausage sizzle for an hour on Friday night? Well, actually, no, I can't, because I've already committed to doing something for somebody else. So it is
for somebody else, for me.
Yeah. So I've got two questions for you, Michelle, and on the basis that we're having the opportunity to talk to you on three different platforms here, local and association, and then business as well. We've been commenting over the last series of our videos in the 5 R's of volunteering: retention, recruitment, recognition, rewards, and raising funds. So on that, across those 3 different areas, could you give us your narrative of which of those, if any, pose the biggest burden across those different environments? And the second part to that question, because we're as usual, we've gone over time and we could talk to you for hours. It's been great. So the second part to that question is, if you had the Michelle magic wand, what area would you improve first?
Probably recruitment. Probably that would be the one thing that I think I wish I could solve more easily. And I think then the more people you have, the more connection you have, everything else I think becomes easier, because like for a reward, for example, if you've got more people involved, then you've got more community around you. You've got more people to share the load, and you often don't do these jobs for reward, but the reward is that you build friendships, you build connections, you build a sense of place, and they're really important things. So I think if we could recruit more people, and I guess show them, enlighten them to what it is to volunteer and to be part of your community, then I think a lot of other problems will be solved.
Yeah, carrot's lovely, but we've heard a lot of communities talk about even stick now needing to use stick side, which is you're part of a membership group. You're getting the benefits of all of this. There's only a few people doing the bulk of the work of many. We're going to have to change your pricing points in order to cater for the gap in volunteering, which we would normally need to support with human time. If we're not getting that, then we need to might pay somebody else. We need to look at this differently. So there's all of these different things that are coming through that probably weren't part of a strategic issue back in the day, but are becoming that because of the managing the time, that follow the Joneses, be involved in everything, as you've said. So recruitment, it's really interesting. So have you got a specific recruitment? I've seen you operate, so maybe you can talk about how you operate to recruit, because you've got a unique approach, and I really like it. But I don't think everyone can do it as effectively as you do it.
Well, I think it's sometimes identifying the people around you that have the skill sets, and I guess I've been fortunate in that I have created events and opportunities for people to come together, and then you build those social connections, and then you have the opportunity to say, well, how about you give me a hand with this? And I think the other element to that is that if you're going to ask somebody to do a job, then when we alluded to this at the start, that they need to know what it is they're getting themselves into, or that they need to be really well supported in what they do. So to know that if they are going to come up and run
take on a minor role like president.
Well, that's right. That there are other people behind you who've got your back. That people have got your back, and that everyone's there to support each other, and that you're not going to be left sort of standing there on your own.
But that's really a really interesting conversation piece, because you've said skills matching in that. Trying to find someone in your network. So no, you've actually pre that you've said, let's do something that's really good that everyone wants to come to, so I can start to get a feel for who's in the zoo. And then once I understand who's in the zoo, pick another event or another activity. So it's almost like a setup piece, which is then have a conversation about their skills and how that could add value to the organisation. And then it's the bit which you've said, which is make sure they're not walking into a shitstorm. Sorry to use that language, but as soon as they come in, if they see it's a nightmare, that they're like, nah, I'm out of here. Wow. There are a lot of complex things to set up, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think, it's they're probably possibly the things that technology are never going to be able to solve. You're never going to be able to recruit somebody based on a social media post or an email that goes out. I think you can try, but they're never successful. They're very easy to ignore. Whereas if somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, how you going? Could I just give you these tongs for a minute? I just need to dash and do something else." You're left holding the tongs.
There's that recruitment strategy you were talking about.
I like it.
Smithy.
Like it.
Could you just hold this for extinguisher for me?
Afterwards, your tongue wielding skills were so amazing.
That's funny. That's funny.
Look, it's funny you said that not really technology, but so I can't help but have my technology hat on there, right? And I know we're at time, so we might close and then finish off. I'll let Daryl finish off with a question to close. It's the inbound piece that I look at. The opportunity there is if you've got a member community that you're involved in, the questions you ask at the front end and then you store into a database or some information that you can then collate against in the future. I think it's very easy not to think technology adds value, but if you've got information, it wields power for you to have conversations. Yeah,
it goes back to asking the right questions.
Exactly, and asking that right question. So I'm super pumped by where that future looks. And if you get it right with simple tools that anyone can use anytime, anyhow, and change just slight perspectives, maybe that opens up a whole different world for how we approach volunteers and recruit in the future. So that's where I'm going to leave, that I think there's still technology opportunity. I don't think it's a center point, but it's an important component of. Daryl, do you want to bring us home, mate?
Yeah, look, well, for a start, Michelle, thanks for your candor and sharing all that wisdom. And obviously a great, community-based sense of humour that you bring to this conversation as well. So appreciate that. It's interesting when we talk about the recruitment in your particular area, that recruitment probably the biggest burden, and how do we use it? Obviously, we've created a platform with an app that we're trying to continually improve for our volunteer users. But it's interesting how we spread or divide the line between recruitment and retention. Because I think you'd probably agree, it's not as hard to get them in the door, but it's then hard to get them to take a seat and stay. So, which instantly goes from recruitment to retention, almost like the next minute.
Yeah.
It's that process. So, what would you say is that the number one thing about, obviously, because I was listening to you before and I'm seeing all these dominoes, which is activity, joy, reward, recognition, activity, joy, reward, recognition. But the dominoes keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger until you fall the last one over and go, oh, congratulations, you're now president.
Yeah.
Like that's that sort of effect. But I'm really interested in, and because I have lots of conversations with lots of organizations about this, is retention more important than recruitment? Because if you're really good at retaining the current volunteers that you have, you don't really need to recruit. However, you've got legacy issues then of going, what's the next generation going to do? And we find a lot at the moment. So it'd be interesting to get your perspective on what's the enthusiasm for stepping in the door from the younger, we know it as junior tennis players that then move into seniors. There's a different level of competition. It's not as much about involvement, and certainly in the footy codes and all that, 16s, everyone plays. And then you've got to have some skill if you want to play seniors,
Yeah.
so there's that different process. But what do you see about that piece for the next generation? Those 16 to 20-year-olds that are all too busy with their socials and their social issues and their social constructs and their mates and all that sort of stuff to actually go, what? Do that? When? Nah, too busy on Saturday. Sorry.
It's really interesting. So at the last market, we just had the school normally runs the barbecue, and we were sort of left. They couldn't do it. The tennis club said, okay. Well, I said, yes, the tennis club will take care of it. I turned around to one of my own children who is 18 and one of his playing partners and another younger girl at the club. And I actually said to them, if I paid you to run the barbecue, I need you to turn up at 7:30 and you need to be there till 12:30. I'm going to give you some dollars to do it. And that got them across the line. And yet at the end of the barbecue, and I was paying them out, I said, look, you need to be discreet about this because there's some volunteers that have given up their time and they're not getting paid. And they all turned around to me and they said, oh, we'd do it next time for nothing.
Wow.
So
Next time.
Well, and next time is going to be in July. So
I love it.
Yeah.
The test.
Yeah. And then the next time will be in August.
If I know you, Michelle, that test will come through to fruition.
Well, I just think that sometimes, the initial recruitment is, if the experience is great, then retention is not necessarily so hard. And I'm also a bit of a believer that actually you shouldn't stay in a role for too long because that actually stops other people. If they think, oh, Michelle's going to do it, Michelle will take care of it, Michelle will put her hand up, I don't need to worry. It takes away their ownership of their community. So if you actually create a space that is supported and has all the framework, and so they're stepping into something that they know they can come and ask me a question, but actually it's going to be their job to take on. I think that it's actually really important to have a succession plan, and committees and volunteer groups are terrible at anything like that. And I know that, like within the farming community that I was involved in years ago, that those things are really important because you're not going to be there forever, and you can't rely on the person who has all the knowledge because if something happens to them, you are in deep trouble. I think you almost, when you take on a role, you almost need to be working on your succession plan. And like I say, retention, keeping those people, but sometimes, and this is probably the wrong thing to say, is that there are people in roles that perhaps should have stepped aside a few years ago to allow for new people to come in and try new things and try different things. And I see some clubs struggling because they're sort of held back with
stagnancy
old,
is the root of not change, right?
And so, you know, retention isn't everything if you're not retaining the right people, is what I'm going to say.
No, I think that finishes
it's perfect.
extremely well.
A message to all our volunteer audience.
Wonderful conversation. Always a pleasure to chat with you, Michelle. Thanks for coming in today, giving us your time, your energy, and your knowledge. We look forward to continuing these sorts of conversations with other amazing Michelles, Sues, Tonys, and Bills across the volunteer community. We'll close out on that, Darryl. Great
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Michelle. Thanks for being here. And to all our volunteers, keep being awesome. Thanks.
See you all.